Hi, everyone. Welcome to Access Chat. We were recording Access Chat on Good Friday, and Neil was unable to join us, but we appreciated Yana being able to join us and Antonio joining us as well. And we'll just say early happy Easter for those of you that celebrate that beautiful holiday. Today, our guest is Yana Beranek. And I know I just said that really wrong. And so I'm looking forward to her saying it correctly. And she's with Ipsos, which is a French company, and she's the head of their UX portion of the company. And so they do a lot of very interesting research, and they are making sure that research is also done for our community, the community of people with disabilities. I had the pleasure to speak on stage with her in Chicago and was very impressed with what they're doing. So, Yana, welcome to the program. Can you start by probably pronouncing your name better than I did and tell us more about your company too? Sorry.
Sure. You bet. So Yana Beranek, I'm the global head of UX at Ipsos, and happy to be here today. Thanks for inviting me, Deborah. It was a pleasure to meet you in Chicago, and I'm glad to be with you today. So we are a global research organization. We operate in 90 countries, but we focus on UX in 24 markets that reach about 40 countries. So that means that we're covering the US, Latin America, Southeast Asia, China, Europe, and the Middle East, as well as sub-Saharan Africa. So we do a lot of research understanding how to localize products and make them more inclusive to communities that are culturally different from the US, as well as, we do have a focus on accessible UX research and design to make sure that our products that we're advising our clients actually to help them build more inclusive products.
Go ahead, Antonio.
No, given the work that you have been doing and some elements from the report, is there any particular trends that you have identified?
Sure. So when it comes to inclusive design, I think the biggest trend that I see is that we need to simplify. The ability to add things in tech these days means that our systems get more and more complex, and that complexity is felt by the user. But for many people, people with disabilities and people without disabilities, that complexity is overwhelming. It can really create obstacles to usage. And so one of the things that we see a lot, and I know we saw it in the research that we did about employment sites, is that the more simplified things are, the easier it is for assistive technology to help people use the sites, but also it's just easier to use for everyone. We do think that like the advent of the smartphone and especially voice assistants on smartphones really makes the smartphone a great tool. But sometimes things are not designed well for the smartphone. And we did hear in our research that a lot of people prefer to use some of the apps on their phones rather than going to a desktop computer and using assistive technology on a website, because the mobile app is much better designed with simplicity in mind to help users really navigate more quickly and efficiently.
Right, I agree. And can we talk a little bit about, because I know that Antonio was referring to the one study that you had shared with us, but I believe, if I'm correct, y'all have done more than one study. So I was just curious, why did y'all decide that this was something that you did want to engage in, which, by the way, we're very, very appreciative of, but we still see a lot of research groups not doing it, even our universities and colleges. And so I certainly am very appreciative of what you're doing, but can you tell us a little bit about how you got into it? I'm hoping you're going to say that your customers demanded that y'all give them this research. Yeah.
Well, and quite frankly, that's the truth. So we got started in accessible UX by the request of a client. And you met that client in Chicago. Meta has long been committed to making their products more accessible, and they came to us and asked us to help. With many of our clients, we find that one of their biggest challenges is recruiting people with disabilities to join their research. And so we have tried to simplify that for clients by helping them build panels. And those panels are people who have self-identified as having disabilities. And generally, it's of interest for our clients in technology that those people with disabilities are using certain types of assistive technology, because they're very interested to understand compatibility issues of their designs with assistive technology. So it was a pull, and we continue to see that it's a pull from our clients, that they want to reach a broader audience, that they want to design shifting left, right? To start earlier with the community of people with disabilities, to understand what would the ideal product experience be, what would the ideal digital experience be, and how can we help them reach those consumers so that we can get their input as early in the product development process as possible. I don't know who said it, but it's still one of my favorite analogies. It's hard to put the blueberries in the muffin after you've baked it. So we like to make sure that we're giving our clients as much information early on about what will help make a more inclusive design. And we do that not by consulting or advising, but by conducting research that includes people with disabilities. So we like to have these panels ready so that when somebody says, well, we don't have time, to get that recruit, we can say, of course you do. It's not hard. We'll just tap into our panels and get you some people that can give you their feedback, can test an experience, can tell you their ideas, and can co-create with you on your product development. So,
Yana, one quick question, and I'm going to turn it over to Antonio, but I also have done a lot of that, the panels and stuff in the past. But one thing that we learned very quickly when we were doing research because I've been in the field for so long, was you have to make sure that you're including people with disabilities with different skill levels. So one thing that we saw was we were always inviting people that were, fantastic at a screen reader. They're just, because the screen reader is a very, very robust piece of software. And so a lot of people use these assistive technology tools in different ways. Some of us are novice users, some of us are medium, some of us are experts. But the reality is most people are not experts using their own assistive technology. We wish they would be, but it's like anything else. Our phones, I don't use all of the amazing abilities of my phone. Right. So I was just wondering if that was something that you're also remembering to do, because we're not seeing it sometimes in other researchers, and I'm really hoping researchers remember we all use assistive technology in different ways as well. So you just have to consider that part of the technological, evaluation. Yes.
And, I think sometimes we actually force people to use something they don't use that often when we do the research, because we're not necessarily prepared to support their preferred tool. So that's, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's probably close to reality. We do hear one of the interesting things that we've learned in research, and I'm sure you know this, but, people switching devices. So many people with disabilities who have a smartphone that's an iOS phone, they have a Mac, and they have a PC. And they're using, JAWS with their PC, they're using the voice assistants of Mac, and they're using their smartphone. And they switch devices based on what the site that they're going to use or tool they're going to use works best with, which to me is just kind of inexcusable that we've created this ecosystem where people are having to change computers all the time just to, in a day, they can't just sit down and use their machine. It's ridiculous, but it's the reality, right? So I think, to your point, we often find that in research, the thing that we're asking or the way we're asking people to test is not their preference. So we create inexperienced users by the very nature of our research. But we probably could be more deliberate about that in our efforts to recruit. One thing that we do want to make sure of, though, is that we don't want sessions to be too frustrating for a participant, especially someone for whom a session may be a very exhausting event, either physically or emotionally or mentally. So we do try to make sure that our technology is going to work, and so that we're not wasting their time or causing undue, harm or to a participant. We do try to be thoughtful about that. And we also want to make sure that the outcome for our client is not just, wow, this doesn't work. We need to be able to walk away with some suggestions. So one of
my testers years ago said, this sucks. And I'm like, okay, our customers don't suck.
Right. You got it. So I think that that's something that we try to balance.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, as you explain it, and I want to let Antonio come in, but there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts with this. Even, it's interesting when we see, and we're so glad the large global brands are coming into these conversations so meaningfully. But I think a lot of our community sometimes think that y'all aren't doing this, and so we're going to have to do it. And I see individual efforts being made, but I think complex corporations and large complex research sort of needs experience with, certain experiences as well, to make sure we're getting that part right.
Right. I agree.
Over to Antonio.
Sometimes we still have people questioning, how many people with screen readers are going to access to our website? How many people who do actually are going to use our website if we make it accessible? On the other end, we know that around 98% of the web is not accessible. Right. How do you see the study that you did helping us to make the case on the economic impact of good accessible design?
Sure. Well, I think for one part, what we heard was that a lot of participants wouldn't use the sites that we were testing because they've found that they aren't accessible, and so they go to different sites. And we know that 71% of people with disabilities will abandon a site if it's not accessible. So do you want to reach that market or not? Right? I mean, we've already talked about, in the US, they say $1.2 trillion worth of disposable income annually for people with disabilities. I feel strongly that one of the best ways we can make the case for this research is to get the numbers going. I recently was at the Human Factors Engineering Society's International Symposium, and, looking at the medical device arena and whether or not those products are accessible, right? If that increases patient use, patient compliance, better health outcomes, there are all sorts of arguments that you can make for what a positive return on investment can be for the industry that you're in. So I think that a lot of it has to do with those decision makers generally, in my experience, they are data driven.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, as we would say, of what's the data, and don't expect them to take you on your word, right? I think that's part of too why we recommend doing pilots, right? To say, okay, let's improve this thing and see how it increases usage. Right. And then you can take that small pilot and suddenly everybody wants some of that. And I think, that's what we've seen with researchers that are using our accessible panels, we call them, our panels of people with disabilities, is that people see, oh, you could design this in a way that would allow more people to use it. And I am, judged on the number of active users I have per month. Well, Make the business case that resonates with the stakeholder, and don't expect them just to buy in because you feel strongly about it.
So true. I would say another thing, Yana, you mentioned some research when you were talking about trillions of dollars. We're leaving trillions of dollars.
Yes.
Well, that I want to say we don't know if that's true. I want to also say that we say in the United States we're leaving $290 million on the table. I don't know if that's true, and something that we've been doing for a long time is we keep throwing out these numbers, but the problem is our community, which is something I'm really trying to help. Our community is not coming out. And the realities of our community is that we have not convened in a way that really we need to add value. Another problem with our community is that at least 75% of us have invisible or hidden disabilities that we have to talk about. And Yana, I know you were talking about before we started about your vision as an 8-year-old girl, and I'll let you say that story. But I think part of the problem, because is it true that we're leaving trillions of dollars on the table if we're not including people with disabilities, and we're not understanding that people are human? As we age, we start moving into disabilities when people do not identify as part of our community. So it gets to be a very complex thing that I'm saying here. But the reality is, when we say to people, somebody said that the other day, oh, you're leaving trillions of dollars on the table by not including us. We cannot prove that. We cannot prove that. And I don't believe that's probably true, because our community has to bank. We have to use transportation. We have to we have to do things. So what we do is, you've already talked about this. It's very complicated how a person, a friend of mine, Jasmine, she's blind. She lives in the Philippines. They won't let her get a banking account by herself because she's blind. They say it's not secure. Well, wow. Oh, I have so many problems with that statement, but okay. And so she works around the system and still gets her banking needs done. So are they leaving trillions of dollars on the table, or are they creating all these really great resources and products and services that we cannot access meaningfully? So don't try to upsell us, because we can't even use your basic systems that we desperately need. So the point I'm saying, though, is that once again, the work I'm doing with Billion Strong, trying to get us to come out and say, I proudly identify as a person with a disability. And by the way, I'm 65 years old. I'm also an aging person. Don't decide I'm old, though, because I'm very healthy. I take care of myself. I eat right. People are living into their hundreds. A woman just came out at 95 as being gay. No, do not decide who we are. Make your products and service accessible to all humans. Anyway, sorry for that little rant.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's something to that, but I also think there are products that people choose not to use. So, for example, I know some people above the age of 80 who will not use Uber because they're intimidated by how to set up the app and use it. So they continue to drive themselves around.
Right. But that's not just age related. There's also, I know young people that won't do that. So
sure, but the point being, there is economic activity that could be happening of people using rideshare apps. So when you say, is there really money left on the table? I believe there is.
I agree, but just in a different way, I think.
I mean, there is the idea that people are using a service other than yours. But then there's also the situation of people not trialing things. So you mentioned, digital wallets. That may be something that people opt out of. I know last year I heard from a client who said, we were focused on card security. So we created, and you guys may even know of this product or the company that did it. We have a debit card that the 3-digit code on the back, the security code, changes every 10 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And that's secure, right? Because it's like a token and nobody will ever be able to write that down and use it. And I think it was, there were several blind organizations that came out and said, don't ever get a card from this processor because you won't be able to use it because you can't manage. It's not showing up every 10 seconds in Braille. It's changing every 10 seconds. So that company lost out on all this economic opportunity. So, I think the point is not that they're leaving 1.2 trillion on the table. That's not the stat that I'm looking at. I'm looking at that's their disposable income annually. They may very well be spending it with someone.
I agree.
So I think we're probably on the same page there.
It's just more complex than people say. And when they do that, then the brands we're trying to convince, whoever that is, they just don't believe us. And so then it weakens. Why I have to fight to be included, I don't know. Anyway, I would say that to corporate brands.
Right.
And as we convene, and we really notice who is and is not actually meaningfully including us, I think the community will have a much better voice than we have now. And right now we sort of have to rely on amazing teams like y'all fighting for us, and we certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned earlier my, my vision loss, right, which happened when I was in second grade. I've never been able to see well. I can't see anything really without glasses, and now with multiple corrections in my contact lenses. But I do think that now that especially as my eyes are aging and I'm still in the role that I'm in, I've become maybe more of an advocate, right? And so to your point, like, I don't know that we have to call ourselves out as much as we have to speak up to the reality of what we are or what we experience. And whatever the reason is that I can't read something doesn't matter nearly as much as saying, hey, this isn't legible.
Right.
For me, you don't need to know why it's not legible for me. It simply isn't. So.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a good, it does get back to the community speaking up. I think we do have to tell people, because this is one of the things that surprises me, is a number of people who don't seem to be willing. We had a situation at Ipsos where we had someone join our team who was severely dyslexic. And so we got some new tools. And all of a sudden, all these other people were using them too.
Right.
And, we find out that we've got, more than one person on the team with dyslexia and more than one person with, a neurodiverse situation that makes this new tool really good for them. And, anyone could have asked for it, but they didn't. So there is an element of, advocating that I know is tiresome, right? But
it is, and we're learning too, though. Yeah. Because I didn't even know I had ADHD and dyslexia. Yeah. I knew that I was different in some ways, but for example, and I've said this on air before, I struggle with my left and right. I always do. And I was in the marching band to try to but there's actually something with ADHD that is a spatial thing that causes, so is my brain broken? I don't know or not, but this is just how I've always been. And I think a lot of us are now rethinking, so I think it's a really good time to be talking about all this and identity, and to be talking about it in the way that we're just not saying stuff, we're digging into what we're saying, which once again, I think is why the research is critical, and we need the research and we need it from different perspectives. So that's why we really applaud the work you are doing.
I think one element is interesting that you're talking about dyslexia and the availability of technology. And for quite a period of time, and even today, some organizations, when they provide support for people who need assistive tech, people need to claim the need for assistive tech.
Right.
But we've seen other organizations who broadly deploy the assistive tech to everyone who want to use it. And what we see from that is that increases productivity to everyone.
Sure.
Without putting the burden of people saying, oh, I need this.
Right.
So there's clear advantages of rolling out and making technology accessible, because everyone will benefit from it.
Right. I think that's a great point. And, the other part about that is that systematically it would make it a better experience for the users, because if you planned for those tools, they wouldn't be an add-on that everyone, it's sometimes a struggle to get the teams to agree to buy licenses, to provide services, to make those services work with our current platforms. And so if we were planning for everyone, rather than, carving out exceptions, I think that, just to your point, we'd be more productive for sure, because we wouldn't be fighting with our technology and fighting those integrations, which are not seamless. I know from experience, we all probably run into that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead, Jenny. I'm sorry.
Are there any other areas or sectors where you believe further research on accessible UX could be impactful or urgently needed?
Absolutely. So I think there's still more work to be done in the employment sector, because all we found out was that it's hard, so there's more to be done there. I think financial services is a huge opportunity, and it is a place where we do a lot of work. I think healthcare is a huge opportunity because of the intersectionality of disability and chronic illness. And as more and more devices are become connected, right? So we see that in the diabetes space, digitally connected tools to manage diabetes, which, may be accompanied by mobility issues or loss of vision, right? So healthcare is a huge space, I think. So those are some that come to mind. I think also online learning, one thing that we hear a lot is that everybody's just defaulted to kind of transcribed closed caption. And so a lot of online learning content is pretty worthless for people with disabilities, because the default now is like, oh, that's handled, so I don't need to do anything about it. And I think that's really not the case. Accessing that content and making sure that the content is valuable. And so that probably plays across a lot of media as well, would be my guess. So yeah, there's really endless, I know Deborah and I, when we were in Chicago, we were with folks from telecom, and there's certainly, as more and more things shift to our phones, right, then there's that whole question of how do the devices work, and are the devices built for, for everyone? Do they work for everyone? And I know, telecom companies have, I think, to some degree, led a lot of good research in that space, because they have a lot to lose if they aren't making their systems and their devices work well. So, the array of sectors that need the research to be run with people with disabilities and designed in a more inclusive way, I think is pretty endless. I don't see that it's confined.
Yeah. Yana, I know that we're almost out of time, and we want to, do you mind just telling us a little bit about some of the research, and also, one thing that, how can people find out more about the research you're doing? And I also would be curious if you would, what could the community do to support what you're doing as well? Because your work, as well as a lot of others' work, other people's work, is making a difference for our community in the biggest sense of that word. So I would also be curious, what do we do to better help, you and the work that you're doing and other researchers at the same time?
Sure. So I think one of the key ways that the community can help is to volunteer for research studies. And they are compensated. So it's not, it does take time, but we do compensate people for this research. So it's not like we're asking you to do it for free.
Good, because usually we are asked to do it for free, and our
no.
Really tired of that.
Okay, well, so just know that Ipsos does not ask for volunteers because our clients are paying for the research. So we pay incentives, and we pay fair incentives. So we don't want to coerce anyone to join our research with high remuneration, but we do want it to be worth someone's hour of time, right? So if you see an opportunity or are invited by a recruiter, because normally it's either a phone call or an email that you'll receive to participate, please do. I think also looking into those types of opportunities. So if you go to ipsos.com, there are ways to join our panels. There are ways to participate in our surveys. There are ways to be recruited. And part of why we miss people is because we do oftentimes send those invitations online. We send them via text message. And if you're not in the pool, we're not going to reach you. So kind of looking for the opportunities. But, I would say, like, look at places like Ipsos, Nielsen, Kantar. I hate to speak up for the competitors, and I don't know if they do, accessible research, but we do. And
don't either. We should know.
So, I would say look for those opportunities. I know a lot of our recruiters also use LinkedIn as a way to recruit. So making it clear somehow, that you are open to participating, maybe mention studies that you've participated in as a participant in the past might be a way to help us know that you would like to be contacted. So that is really helpful. And then I think, we are trying we're trying. I'll leave it there. I'll say we are trying to do this well and do it right. And we ask questions and we get it wrong. And I'm never going to say that that we've achieved where we want to be. So I think don't get too frustrated by us getting it wrong, because if we all get frustrated and about us doing it wrong, we're not going to be able to do it right ever. And we do try to do pilot sessions of our research before we start sessions with people, so that we don't waste people's time. So, we are trying to do things. We're trying to educate ourselves, but do have some patience with us, because we are, all of us are learning as we go. But we really do want to make it easy for our clients, right? The easier that we make it look or seem to our clients to have people with disabilities participate in research, the more likely they are to come back for more. And when they get useful insights that inform their product design in a way that they've never thought of because they just, didn't have the right people in the room, the more bought in they are. And that is something that we have seen, is that our clients who have started these programs with us have expanded them. So this is not something where when people do it a couple times, like, well, that was useless, I think we'll just go back to the way we used to do it. Instead, this is an aha moment for most organizations that they want to do more. And so, so we want things to go smoothly for them as well.
And as a market research company at Ipsos, do you see an interest from clients on this type of research? Do you see now there's a clear interest comparatively with the last three years?
Yes. In fact, one thing that we've gotten involved in, and we just got involved in the last 6 months, is the Accessible Insights Consortium. So that's a group of both client side, or what we would say as in-house research groups, and vendors like Ipsos that provide market research services to clients, working together to talk about the challenges, to talk about how we do this, to introduce ourselves to each other, because we do hear that clients are looking for vendors who can provide, especially kind of qualitative research like we do, and not just surveys and not just evaluations of their products, but actually interviews and sessions, contextual inquiry with people with disabilities using their products and tools and services. So, but there is a feeling that there aren't enough researchers that are qualified and prepared to do that. So we have been working with industry to to make ourselves more visible and also to help our corporate clients understand how we'll work together. We actually have a conference coming up in April in Atlanta, where our consortium will be presenting workshops to dozens of corporate researchers who want to know more about how to run accessible research. So I do believe that the demand is growing. And it's, like I said, it's not going to go backwards.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say something, Yana. You had mentioned something about us being patient. I will tell you, the community, we're just not going to be patient anymore.
That's fair enough.
Have been patient for a while, and especially Americans with disabilities. I would not ask them to be patient. I personally am not asking them to be patient because they're so tired of not being included. I understand.
Well, and by patient, I mean be patient when you're invited to participate.
Oh no, I mean, I agree with you. I'm just saying, we understand that right now that is something that our community
isn't. Yeah.
But it's not only our community, it's everybody. But I also agree with you in that we have to allow people also to learn.
Yeah.
To have you learn to, So I just wanted to say that it's funny because I was on LinkedIn answering some comments and we were talking about specifically that patient word. So, but no, the community is no longer, we're really tired of being patient with the corporations. We've been talking to the corporations about how important this is at least since 1990. I say to corporations, you need to be talking to Yana because we are not going to be patient anymore. We're just not going to. We're tired of not being included. And why would you not include all humans? Well, I was a technologist for years, and you need to make sure that everybody can meaningfully use it. So I just am just being honest with you, Yana.
But I think
going to be patient with this.
I understand that in the context of having been excluded. I think the thing is that I think this is something that I heard from someone, and you may disagree with this too, but I think for those of us who are trying to row the boat together, we need to assume that people have the best intentions.
I agree. And
if people feel like by stepping into this or getting in the boat, they're going to, when they do things wrong, they're going to be attacked or, that will not help move the boat forward.
Just saying,
so that's where I think that we have to be, thoughtful to each other.
I agree.
And so that's where my request for patience comes in is let's all assume that we have the best intention, because I think it is a deterrent to companies to do this because they think they're going to get bad publicity if they do something wrong.
I understand.
So they'd rather not do anything at all than say they're trying and get, smacked on the nose for not doing it right. And that's a barrier.
But at the same time, they have no choice. They do have to address it because we've made sure with our laws that we're not. And it's just important for the brands to understand the community is just really tired of waiting.
Yeah.
So, but I believe, Yana, you and I are 100% on the same page. I just am being honest too in that.
And I'm being honest too, right? Because I do think it creates
a word that the community is. Yeah, I know. And the friction is evident out there.
But one of the reasons why we started Access Chat a while ago was actually fits very well in this topic, because we noticed that many conversations around the topic of accessibility and disability were taking place in silos in very close spaces.
Consortiums that are inclusive.
So experts talking with experts, people with disabilities talking with people with disabilities. So, and then industry was not talking with those groups. So we that's why we started Access Chat, was to open this type of conversations.
Right.
And if you follow back the path of guests that we had over the years, we tried to bring everyone, even people who were not doing it perfectly, because they were. So that was always our aim. And we always thought, the places where you need to talk about accessibility is not just at CSUN or specific places where the technology is addressed. You need to talk at that CES. You need to talk at that big technology conferences. You need to talk at that
And we are. We're
conference.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I met Yana, at a mainstream thing.
Yeah.
So, but I do know that we need to close. We've gone up. Sorry, I apologize.
We just have a lot to talk about.
We're on the same page, but the reality is, I am sorry, Yana, but for corporations to hear us, the community is not willing to wait anymore. So please contact Yana and get your research done, because the community has, I've always been nice, but really, we're really tired of it. And by the way, they do not have a choice, because if they do not start including us, we're going to deliberately not work for them, and our allies are going to join. So it's important that brands understand that the community voice is getting much stronger. So it's important to use the experts that we're bringing on Access Chat. So I mean that also as a positive thing. But speaking of Access Chat, thank you to my Clear Text for keeping us captioned all these years. And we're so grateful for Amazon being one of our supporters and supporting Access Chat, so we can stay on air and have these really powerful conversations. So thank you, Yana. Thank you, Antonio.
Yes, thank you.
And we appreciate everybody that's working on this, because as Yana said, this is a work in progress. Technology never sits still, so we can catch up with it, ever. So we have to always, and yes, we have to be patient with each other, but corporations, our patience is getting low. So please make sure you get good research out there. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks.